And we put Layton in there with combined clusters according to the League of Cities and Towns with the established and mid-sized cities and the cities of the first and second class. So it's a bit of a combined group. And there's Layton up there, right at the average of everybody. We asked about community well-being, and for every city that number is a little lower than their personal well-being, but we still had 66% saying a 4 or a 5, and you're above average compared to all the other study cities, so that's great. We asked about a number of different categories of well-being as well, 10 different categories, and this is based on work that's done nationally and internationally, and these are common categories of well-being. Not to say they're all important to everybody, so we asked folks to not only rate how their well-being is in these categories, but how important the category is to them. And then we can put it together in this graph, and what you can see here is that we've got the highest rated domains are living standards and safety and security. This is what's going well in Layton. When we think about the most important domains, it's that safety and security, mental health, living standards, and physical health. Those are the top 4 things, and that's the top 4 in all of the cities. That's really common. What we have down here is this red zone, and these are elements or categories that are really important to people, but are rated a little bit lower than average. And physical health comes into that zone. Mental health approaches that zone. And these are things that some of the cities call this kind of an action arena, perhaps where some attention is might be appreciated by residents. Of course, remember that this survey was done in the thick of the pandemic, and there's a reason for that. In 2020, the 18 cities that participated, we did that survey January, February 2020. Well, what happened in March? Well, we launched into this whole pandemic experience. And so many of those cities wanted to see how the pandemic was affecting well-being, so we did it again. But that gave a chance for new cities like Layton to come on board and get some data. The idea here being, it'd be great to come back to Layton in another year or so, whenever it seems we're well out of this pandemic experience, and we hope to see some of those numbers bounce up. So when we look at some of these issues of well-being, in Layton, we had those folks from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as well as college graduates, generally reported some higher levels of well-being. Females reported higher levels of importance on things like mental health, safety and security, and social connections. And there are other demographic findings, and the details are all in the report for you to look at. It's not that these perspectives are shared evenly across your residents, and they're not shared evenly across the state of Utah. But this gives you an overall sense of how things shape out. But that COVID experience, we asked if the personal well-being had changed in the last year, and 48% of the respondents in Layton said that their well-being had declined in the last year. And in terms of the community well-being, 49% had said that the well-being of the city as a whole had declined. And so that's on the kind of in the upper half of the cities across the state. So there were definitely some experiences of affecting the well-being, and so we would expect down the road that these numbers would bounce up a little bit once we come out of this. But what was affected? Interestingly enough, being a physical sort of virus situation, physical health was a little less than half of the respondents saying their well-being had declined in that area. But the top 3 issues that were most affected were those social connections, the cultural opportunities, and mental health. Those were the 3 things that were felt by Layton respondents much more sort of strongly over this past year of the pandemic. Well-being, community well-being was less likely to decline for those who've lived here a little bit less, 5 years or less. Sounds like that makes some sense. They're just not as connected to the community, perhaps. Social connections were more likely to decline for female respondents than male respondents. So a little bit of a gender effect there. Now, the other thing we found strongly in the data, and this is not just true for Layton, is that community connections, feeling that sense of belonging or connected to your community, was strongly correlated with well-being. And that we know from the literature that it affects well-being, it affects health and mental health, things like that. So there was a really pretty sharp correlation there. Now Layton comes in a little on the lower end in terms of that score of community connectedness, but it's in there with the other more urban places. So the larger the cities, the harder I think it's been for some of those cities to have that sense of community connection. And so you're in company of other large cities in that lower end of the spectrum. But we have just received a grant to do a little bit more work and provide some resources for cities related to well-being. And the first area we're going to tackle is this: community connectedness. How have cities? What are the best practices for building that sense of connection and community? And so we're finding some great resources, and we'll be sharing that with all of the cities. And so we'll be getting back to you on things like that. It varies from things like having, using your design to create spaces where people can gather and come together. Green spaces and parks are often good for things like this, as well as different kinds of activities or events that bring people together. And a strange one that's popping up a fair bit is connection with animals. So not just people's own pets, being able to sort of walk a pet, but being able to maybe walk someone else's pet, or to have a petting zoo or something like that. So we'll dig into that a little bit and find out which size of cities. There are different things out there, but we'll share some of those resources with you over this next year. Now, every city's residents and respondents have some concerns. We had a long list of possible concerns, and the top 4 here that popped out for over 3/4 of the respondents were air quality, not unique. Most of the Wasatch Front cities had this up top. Affordable housing, also very common across the state. Roads and transportation, also very common, and water supply. So you weren't unique in this, but they were very strong in Layton, stronger than some of the other cities. But over half of Layton's respondents had major or moderate concerns about a whole host of other things, from public safety and opportunities for youth, access to public land, recreation opportunities and employment opportunities, social and emotional support, access to quality food, and access to mental health care by more than half of the respondents. So lots of things on people's minds. We have these open-ended places where people can also tell us what else they're thinking about in terms of well-being. And some of the other things that came up is some concerns about overdevelopment and building on green space that they value, overpopulation and changing social positioning in the community. Some folks concerned about planes shaking their houses and the jet noise. The proximity to the Air Force Base probably influences that. Some concerns about the east side of Layton and a lack of a park over there. And then these, you can see that we were in the midst of the pandemic. The COVID restrictions were felt by some, affecting some small businesses. And again, we hope that some of that would rebound after we get back to studying later. We asked folks across every city about population and economic growth. You had 71% of your respondents say that population growth is too fast. That's also not uncommon in the rapid growing Wasatch Front. But when we get to economic development, folks were a little bit more divided. We had 42% saying the economic development is too fast, 38% saying that it's just right, and then a few others saying too slow or did not have an opinion. Landscapes is something that we know from the literature and other studies that landscapes can affect people's well-being. And boy, in Layton, the natural landscapes really positively influential. People love that we get by the mountains, the rivers and streams, the trails, lakes, city parks was high, even farmland and red rock, which we don't have red rock here in Layton, but it means people appreciate being able to get out and travel around the state and be around that red rock country. Now, when we get into the development and industry, you see, again, a split, some mixed perceptions of this. We get a few more people who are negative about the residential and commercial development, a few more people negative about manufacturing industry or extractive industry. And I believe that it's not necessarily do they have some specific thing in mind or that there's even extractive industry in their neighborhood, but it's the idea of it. I think that people are answering this question about. But we also ask people, what do you value about your city? And in Layton, there were so many comments, and people like the sense of being connected. For such a large city, you guys are, I think, up to over 75,000 people or something now. they feel connected to each other. They have that small town feel. That's something we hear more from the cities of, that are less than 10,000 or 2,000. And for you guys, that's really neat that they feel like they have that small town feel here. It's friendly and family friendly. They appreciate the good location here, the quality of life, that there's lots of amenities around, that there's abundant recreation and great trails, access to nature. People feel safe and they feel like their city is well governed. So that's a testament to you all here in the room. So that's really all I wanted to highlight today. I know you have other things on your agenda. Take a look at the report that's on the website, and I'd be happy to answer any questions now or just as this rolls out. And if I can be of any other help, I'd be happy to be in touch.
Okay, so go back to the fact that they feel connected, but yet that was also a priority in the beginning that you felt like we needed to work on. So
yeah, that's right. So
how do you
can
answer that?
And it might be that in the open, that open comments. I'm sorry, I slipped right past it here. It's hard to tell when we get into the open comments, and we haven't done any analysis to see who's commenting that they feel connected. Are they those 96 people that have the highest levels of connectedness that are commenting on that? That's something that we're not so sure on. But for those who feel connected, they certainly value that about their city, and I think that just goes in with the general finding here. Those who aren't connected aren't going to mention it. So the open comments are, they're not something we put statistics on or say it's the majority. It's just something that's commented on more often than not.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to present this to us, number one, but also conducting the survey and allowing us to jump in on it. And certainly, I'm sure going forward, we'll probably still continue to participate because obviously this will be our foundation now. And knowing it was the COVID impact versus non, so
yeah, it'll give you a place to track your recovery, I think, as a city and for your residents. So I'd be happy to stay in touch. But I have to think about timing of that. Certainly now is not the time to do it. We want to let things blow over a little bit. And so we'll kind of keep an eye on that and be in touch when it starts to look like we might have a good opportunity. Maybe it'll be next, I don't think it'll be this winter, but I would say maybe in the fall or maybe in the winter of 2023. But in the meantime, we have this grant to provide you with some resources, particularly on connectedness, but we'll be gathering other things, mental health and other things too. So we'll share that with you.
well, again, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Appreciate your time.
Was it done in Spanish?
Yes, it was done in Spanish.
Okay, council, if you have any reports, now's the time I'll have you share with us. I wanted to allow Dr. Flint to be able to present.
Thank you. Dawn, let me know your thoughts about the convention. Thank you.
So, anybody have anything to report on there?
I visited with Kim. Actually, we went to Davis County and we looked at the public audit of the election results. And it was just interesting just to see just how much effort and attention goes into making sure that every vote is counted and the computer's not counting something wrongly, and there's a lot of checks and balances. And it was just we run a good election system in Utah. And I think it just helps when we can go in there and see that. It's open to the public. It just helps the veracity and the ability for the public to trust that when they vote, that it's being counted in the proper way. So.
And all the verification steps that they go through. I mean, I've been down there and gone through that, and it's pretty good. Top-notch job on it. And I was very impressed with it. That's why I think 2 elections ago I said, I don't have any qualms with putting my ballot in the mail, and everybody was nervous about that.
And Brian McKinney mentioned that the elected officials that we can go down and we can actually watch them put ballots through, and that's part of what we can do as elected officials. He thought I was a candidate, so he said, you can have a poll watcher come in. I said, well, I'm running faithfully. But he said, oh, if you were a council member, then you actually can come down and we'll walk you through and we'll show you how to go through the process. So it's very interesting to get that.
Yeah, it's well worth it. I mean, like I said, you really gain a respect for the process that they go through and how intense it is, as well as very thorough. I mean, when they're sitting there comparing the signatures on these ballots, you know that they're doing a great job on it. Good job. Anyone else have anything?
The only thing is again, on our youth council, Mayor and I just attended a kind of a graduation for the seniors that are going off to school. And then just to acknowledge that we have Kara from the youth council here with us. So, that's it.
Normally we wouldn't say anything tonight, but Kara, I think you need to share your opportunity that you just heard from yesterday.
Okay.
Council.
So the United States Senate runs a program for juniors where they choose about 14 juniors from across the United States to come and work for them for a few months and to live with them and go through their school. And unfortunately, now that Senator Orrin Hatch is retired, we don't have a spot because we lost seniority. But as far as my degree goes, I've been selected as the youth for Utah to be the waitlist candidate.
Sweet, good for you.
So fingers crossed.
Yeah.
January, hopefully we're sending
Fingers
your
crossed.
house. Yeah.
So would you, if you were chosen for it, you go away?
Yeah, I live, they have a campus, I'll live there and then walk to the Senate every day.
Yeah.
And they have a teacher, they have special school, they have to attend classes.
Sure, yeah. And how long? is that?
Great.
From January to
Okay. Nothing else?
I got a couple.
Okay.
So we had the Top of Utah Military Affairs Committee picnic. And what it helped out, it was the day after we met last time, I think. And they haven't done much, this committee, so it was good to be on the base and to serve the service members up there. The commander was there, and Representative Moore was there, and the mayor was there.
And Clint was working.
Just a little bit.
Good.
Anyways, yeah, I guess
Put him to work.
we do it every year.
Yes.
And it was a good time, so I appreciated the opportunity. And with Utopia, we had the progress report on this last meeting and the progress report. We're gonna have them come. Alex is working on that to give us all an update, progress update for Utopia, for Layton and kind of the whole network. And that's all good news there. And then finally
Are you going to Syracuse now?
yeah, it's not today. So Syracuse and Porterfield now. And anyway.
Hey, as long as they select Utopia, we're happy with that.
Yeah. And then the league, the Utah League of Cities and Towns, they've had a few town halls that we've probably all watched and just keep gearing up for the legislative session. Look at Steve over here. There's all sorts of stuff happening. But anyway, buckle up. Buckle up. So that's it for me.
Wasatch Regional Council's also, they're gearing up as well, so I think you're gonna see a lot of synergy this year on what's gonna be coming out of the legislation, or what's gonna be proposed to the legislature. So, okay, anyone else? Okay, well then, I'm gonna turn the time over to Kim Reed to go over our canvassing of the elections. And I want to acknowledge that we do have all the final candidates here. And a few of you, I want to give it to you in between. So hopefully you'll stay through this meeting. Yes, I have a little gift I want to give you. That's what I'm trying to say, so make sure you stay around.
It's an assignment.
Now, when the mayor says gift, yeah. I have to wear something.
That's what they have to reconvene.
Oh, you guys. Christmas is coming.
Yeah.
Be very appreciative.
Yeah. Okay, so go to your packet. The code asks us to convene as the Board of Canvassers. So I'm looking for a motion to adjourn as the City Council and convene as the Board of Canvassers.
So moved.
Thank you, Don.
A second.
Okay, look at your report. This was provided by Davis County. They provided this to me earlier today. Layton City has a total of 41,343 registered voters. The ballots that was received back was 9,909. So our turnout for the primary election was 23.97%.
Sweet. That beat the county's record. I think Davis County was
Well,
22, wasn't it?
I don't know. I just know that it's down from our last election. We were 27%.
Yeah,
We're not
this is
over
this is an off year
Right.
and a primary, so.
So if you go to the next page, you can see how each of the totals of the votes, after they've gone through all of, so these are different than the preliminary results that I originally posted. No, the candidates remained the same that advanced on. I think it's just the number of votes that each candidate received. So if you want to go to the next page, this is what we actually need to review. These are the exceptions of the ballots that they received back in. So we have 2 that were deceased. Those ballots were returned, and where the tab was, someone had, instead of signing the ballots, they actually put deceased. So I'm assuming it was a spouse that received that ballot and informed the county that even though they were a registered voter, that they had this since passed. Those ballots are not opened. They just remove them from the rolls. There was one that moved out of the county. This was interesting. I've never had this before. This ballot was actually voted, signed. So the ballots were mailed, the person voted, moved, and registered in another county, I'm assuming on election day, and provided proof of residency that they could vote and had voted in both counties. And the county was, they go with the most current registration date. So they, so that this was not counted, this ballot. We had 39 ballots that came back that were not signed, no signatures.
So they're gone.
And these
Yes.
are 39 that didn't have a signature and weren't cured.
Yes. What that means, so they have the opportunity, the county can identify who that voter is supposed to be from the outside of the ballot, the number. So they are called. There's a first attempt to call the voter. Second attempt is to send a letter explaining what they need to do. There's an affidavit that they can fill out, sign, send back in, then they would count that. Then they would open that ballot and count that. But if there is nothing comes back for that ballot, no affidavit, no way to verify the signature, they don't open those ballots. So those are still remained as they are. 32 signatures did not match. So as Zach talked about when we went down to the audit, that was one of the things that they do as part of the audit, is that they verify those signatures. It's so interesting. People think, well, my signature changes over time, or how many times have we heard husbands say, well, my wife signs my name better than I do now, but they catch those. I personally know people that have tried to do that, and I'm like, really? You guys should know that. So they also have the opportunity to sign an affidavit and have their ballot count. And so I think some people do and some people don't, but those are the numbers that did not complete the affidavit. We had one that was an empty envelope, and they were able to identify who that ballot belonged to, and that individual had the opportunity to either go into a polling location and vote in person, or send in the affidavit. And she says he never sent the affidavit back, so we assume that individual went to a polling location and voted in person. 244 they received were not timely. We tell, I sent a thing in the utility bill that said, please mail by Friday. We encourage people to mail them by Friday. The postmark has to be, August 9th, had to be August 9th or earlier. So sometimes when they put them in those blue mailboxes located throughout the city, that doesn't mean that that's the day that those ballots are gonna receive that postmark. The postman picks them up and they go to Salt Lake and they process them. So sometimes those postmarks reflect the next day. So I just don't know how to educate the voters any more than what we do.
We had 98% on cast timing, so that's
Yeah,
a
That's
big
true.
number.
and if people call me and they're not sure, I really encourage them to take it to, those drop boxes, because then it counts that very day. So, so that is everything. Do you guys have any questions that I can answer for you?
And the precinct by precinct stuff you said was
Yes,
gonna come.
so yeah, let me explain that. So the way that the county does their, the election system, they cannot provide us, we are actually canvassing our election prior to the 14 days following the election. So they would actually have to complete everything and in order to give us the precinct numbers. But what that does is it prohibits other cities from getting their information later. So we will get our precinct information next Wednesday, after the final day. I will forward that to each one of you, and all of the candidates will also receive that same information so that they can see how the votes came in per each precinct within the city. That will help them with their campaigning. So, do you have any questions? If not, we
Sounds good.
should call for a motion to accept the results or Make a
motion,
statement,
we
but we-
accept it.
okay.
Is there a second?
The results, vote say it.
Yeah, I second
Thank you.
Perkins.
Okay,
Motion to close this meeting and go back to the regular scheduled work meeting? Oh, for everybody to sign it?
okay,
So,
Thanks.
anybody want to make that motion to go back into a regular?
oh wait, I need to make an announcement, sorry, forgot. So,
So this is unofficial. now.
yeah. So, the announcement for, the council seats individuals that will be advancing for the city council seats are Tyson Roberts with 4,418 votes, Bettina Smith Edmondson with 2,547 votes, Jesse Barocio with 2,140 votes, and CJ Benson with 2,074 votes. I will be forwarding this report to the Lieutenant Governor's office.
I still second it.
Thanks.
Well, I'll just say congratulations. All four of the ones that will be advancing are here today, so thank you for attending. Thank you for stepping up and willing to run for city council. Yeah, I think we got a lot of good candidates in, and I'd be happy to work with anyone of you, or any two of you.
And I feel sorry you have to wait till November. That's tough.
That's all you do, Kim.
Thanks. Thank you.
Don't get it on your own.
Yeah, don't sign my name. Okay, so are we good?
Thanks, man.
Okay, let's go ahead and proceed then with item number 4 on our agenda, which, Chad, I believe you're going to be presenting this on the Southgate Industrial Park.
Yep, we'll keep this really brief. This is a kind of a rare occurrence. We have an appeal of our impact fee. In this case, it's a stormwater impact fee. The property is, maybe you could just put the point on there, Steve. It's just off of Fort Lane, right there in that purple outline. There's a number of purple outlines. This one has a development agreement, like some of the other two. This is a development that was approved a little while ago. It's a split between the APZ and The area outside the APZ, that's our accident potential zone. This particular development has an RV park outside of the accident potential zone, and it's got some storage, approved storage use inside the accident potential zone. Our ordinance allows for applicants to appeal their impact fees. In order to do that, they have to pay it. This particular applicant has paid that impact fee. This particular instance, they are retaining 100% of their stormwater on site. That's a relatively new allowance through some state code and federal code changes. So they have designed the site to retain 100% of their stormwater on site. There won't be any impacts, therefore, to our storm drain system. And for that reason, we are recommending that the council approve this appeal of the stormwater impact fee and refund that about $145,000 to the applicant. Now, one other thing that I just want to briefly mention, the code allows for the council to give direction through adoption of a resolution to allow us to provide this exemption to anyone who's in the same situation that retains 100%. That's not on the agenda for tonight, but we would like to bring that back to you at a future date for your consideration, just to keep you up to date, because we do feel like, I don't think, Steve, you probably have some input on this too, but I don't think this will be a very common occurrence, but when it does occur, we'd like to have the ability just administratively to exempt these types of situations from having to pay that money and then go back through a refund type process there. So with that, are there any questions?
Yeah, how do you know what? I mean, you're saying that they're going to retain everything. What's everything?
So there's a storm that they designed to. I don't know if it's the 10-year storm in this case or the 100-year storm, 1-year storm.
Okay.
So they're designing this. They've got retention bases that have been designed to keep that 100-year storm on site, 100% on site.
Okay.
So it'll go down through the ground over time. What was that, sir?
Yeah, when you said the 10-year, I was wondering how you know what to build for.
The 100-year storm in this case sounds like.
No, you just changed. It was 10-year.
Well, no, I was postulating. You said the 100-year storm.
Okay. So a 100-year storm.
Yep.
Okay.
And if these basins don't work and there's damage done down the road, what do you do? What's the recourse?
It's a good question. Well, let's see.
Yeah,
So
about this, talk about the requirements, you can't self-select, you want to do this, the ground has to be. Right.
Yeah, so,
Geotechnical studies prove the ground will absorb a second, but you can explain that.
yeah, so the standards that we have are those low impact development standards, and what they require is that an engineering study be done. With that engineering study, they look at the existing groundwater, they look at the soil types, they look at all of the same things that we look at when they take the water and they detain and then send it off-site, and they say, does this work and can it work? And then they have a factor of safety that they have to build in to those calculations. So the short answer, I guess maybe I ought to let the attorney answer this, is that if they have a problem and they don't maintain their facilities and then they cause property damage to somebody else, they're liable for that. Just like the city is liable if we do something negligent by not containing our own storm water if we design something improperly. But the real issue is that we've built in a factor of safety into these so that they can function properly, but then also have that buffer in case for some reason we have a bigger storm than what we really anticipated. But like Alex said, they can't just say we're going to do this and hope that it works. There has to be a lot of steps that they go through and hurdles to overcome, because it is a concern of ours. And then down the road, if something happens and they say, hey, these aren't working anymore, we need to connect to your storm drainage system, we recommend that the council then impose the storm drain connection fee, the impact fee that would have been paid had they connected to retail rates.
How often do these builders ask for these types of things up front with the plans? I mean, I'm sure you probably knew this was coming.
Filtration and retention. There's other factors like our source water protection zones for our drinking water wells. We don't allow them to infiltrate in those areas, things like that. So.
Yeah, my question was mostly the financial, like the future, if it was going to be something we see more, because it sounds like the state law allows them to do it, which means that $145,000 here and it keeps going, and that's a funding impact fees we aren't going to have in the future. So I'm just curious if this is kind of a one-off or if this is like the new direction of travel.
We do feel like it is a one-off, but there will be others that may potentially meet some of these criteria and these requirements.
So it's open water?
They are open retention ponds. so
Open
they're-
retention,
they look-
there's ponds,
Yeah,
it's not a pond.
there's multiple ponds in order to make the development work. They've had to divide the drainage areas into
Different
three
areas.
separate ones.
It's open, so it's just filtration
Yeah.
to get it back into the ground.
And then it'll
So if it's spread out in different ponds,
Mhm.
and excuse me, but what is it? What do they got there in that area? Is it just for RV parking and stuff? Is it camping?
So there's an RV trailer park on I guess the left side of that hatched line, and then there's storage units on the right side of that hatched
So-
line.
The hatch line is the accident potential zone. Outside of that is where that RV park goes. Inside of it is the storage. It's-
RV park, that's camping?
Yep.
Okay.
Just storage.
So when we have
Just
open
storage,
water,
okay.
is there anything, you don't worry about it, like?
So there's
fence around it?
designs that they have to have certain slopes in order to make sure
Okay.
that if somebody gets into it, they can climb out of it.
Okay.
We do have a requirement that the ponds be able to infiltrate within 72 hours, so they can't
Okay.
just sit and hold water constantly.
Yeah,
forever.
because like it's even around the city, I was just thinking, we don't have fences around our detention or retention, whatever you call them. Because everybody uses it for canoeing. I mean, you know, for literally. You know, some of them had a jet ski on one. I'm like, really? But, but those things are, it's still sloped and
Yeah.
done in the manner, so it's, yeah.
So they've paid 100% of what it was.
Fee was required.
We're gonna give them a refund, that's what we're talking about here, we'll give it back to them.
Yes.
What about your time? Do you keep some of that for overhead, for time you put in working on this? Processing fee,
There's no
whatever you want to
processing
call
fee.
that, it's just pro bono work that we all pay for these people, that doesn't make
Well,
sense.
I would say that
If you've worked on it,
Do we get the interest?
really,
Something.
they've written a letter, and Chad and I have looked at the letter, had a discussion, and we feel like it needs to be.
You're working with that.
I-
is that not in the, is that something that it's
There's
just
no
not?
fee required. We think this will be, again, rare that we're going to have these types of requests.
So that kind of answers my question in a way. I've still got a little concern, like Dawn, to make sure that they have functioning work, because even our storm sewers don't work in all storms. We blow manholes and different things. And my other question would be, and you kind of answered it by saying you figure this won't be very common, because we count on those storm impact fees to build the storm sewers, and you don't see any problems with building the storm sewers we need to if a lot of this kind of thing happens.
If a lot of this happens, then the answer is that the master plan would need to be revisited, and we would reduce the sizes of our facilities that need to be constructed. But in this case, this one is really at the top of the system, and so refunding this is not going to impact the overall master plan of this area.
Yeah, my concern is not with this one specific, but if there became a lot of them,
If there became
it
a
would be
lot,
more of a concern.
then we would need to revisit the size of the pipes we're building in the facilities that would be required. There's a conveyance component, which are the pipes, and then there's the detention component where we're building some of these big regional ponds like Layton.
Not to interject too much, but didn't you mention in a number of other discussions, and we talked about this as staff and debate back and forth, that the extra cost that a developer typically has to go to demonstrate this is viable is, it's not really a big financial savings by the time you do the additional studies and stuff, or we're just paying the fee and connecting the pipes. Depending on your situation, if you have to put in a bunch of line, but if you've got line around you, it's just a matter of connecting, not a significant amount of, as I recall, you correct.
It takes a substantially larger area to retain on site than it would to detain. And so they're actually giving up quite a bit of what I would consider developable space to be able to retain on this site because of the amount of water they have to hold back. So,
But what you're saying, Alex, and one like this is because they'd have to probably come through one of those, it'd be difficult to hook on,
Yeah,
so it makes sense to them, but if they were right against the road and the storm sewer was there, they could hook right
Yeah,
on.
we
But this
we
one's
had that
got houses all the
conversation
way
with
around.
They have several creative approaches to getting water out, none of which worked, and they like this, but this reason I raise it is to say, I don't, again, as has been said, I don't think that, this is, state law allows it, and we need to accommodate it, and we try to take a fair and look at it. But I don't think there's a lot of incentive for the typical developer to want to go to this effort. This one had some situations where they had difficult with access in and out and easements and those kind of things, and so I think they thought this was a good solution, and it happened to be the ground happened to be the right, so that it worked. You know, they did the studies and proved it. But I don't think it's going to happen very often because there's just not a lot of incentive to do it.
So is this like a geotech study where they have somebody else that's liable?
Yeah, there was a
And then when they-
geotechnical study that they had to do to show the permeability of the soils and things like that.
I mean, really, if you want to look at it from your well point of view, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
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 It's that
Just
goes
thinking
back
of
to
the
the
ground,
ground.
it's working
Yeah.
far away.
Yeah, it does.
So, not but one project's going to do that, but.
It's a little bit,
Any other questions?
no?
Okay, thanks, Rich.
Thank you, guys. That's an easy one. Well, Steve, you want to take us through the neighborhood lighting?
Yeah. So maybe a little bit of background on this, maybe that's all right.
Sure.
Nothing that will rowdy, but just to give it context, Councilman Morris and I talked about this, and he's the one who initially asked that this be discussed. So we have a few subdivisions, some older subdivisions in the community that had, and Steve will say this better than I, but when they were built many years ago, they had the private lights in front of their houses. We'll show you where those locations are. They were not public, and the city didn't put them in, and the utility connections are private as well. They're off their own meters, and some of them, in fact, in the city still were gas lamps that they still exist. Most of those aren't working, but they could work. So I think that some residents reached out to at least Councilman Morris, and maybe some of the rest of you, and were concerned about, are these on any kind of a plan for the city to replace them? You have a fee and you're improving lights across the city. When do we get one, or are they going to get one? And so that's the impetus why we looked at this, and we just requested to present this information and make you guys aware of it. You have them in contact, and then talk about our staff's perspective on timing and location, some of the challenges and opportunities associated with that. So that's the context. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. So,
You correct anything I
no, I think that's perfect. That's a great segue. And I think if you recall, I can't remember when it was, June or July of last year, I came in and we talked about streetlights again. So we classified the streetlights in a couple of different ways. We took a look at the city and we said which subdivisions don't have any lighting whatsoever. And then we've been focusing on those for several years to try and get those all taken care of. And then we had a category of subdivisions that were kind of in this nebulous zone where they have streetlights, but they're private streetlights, and some of them are being maintained and others are not being maintained. And so we're getting towards the tail end of the streetlights that are in areas that have no lights. And so this year, you approved a project to do the street lighting in this area east of Fairfield, just around that Gordon Avenue area. And those are areas that we would consider to not have any lighting. And so we put those in. Those green dots are proposed residential streetlights, the SLO2 we call them. And so that's kind of the main area that we're focusing on this year. The area that Councilman Morris got a call from is called Aspen East. That one we're showing needing 13 streetlights being put in, but this is one of the areas that has gas lamp or old gas lamps. Some of them are converted over to electrical lamps. Others have been removed completely. Some are just decorative poles in yards, bird's nests, things like that. And then we have also the Holt subdivision out west near King Street that has the same situation going on there. Cook subdivision, sorry. We were talking about Holt earlier, but yeah, the Cook subdivision. So then we have all of these in the pink reddish dots here. Those are all subdivisions that have private streetlights that are privately owned, yet they're more streetlights, they're better streetlights, I guess, than these two that are gas lamp subdivisions, but they present a challenge because they're owned by either the HOA or the homeowners. They're connected to the homeowner's light or power meter, and then the HOA pays them for the power that's being used. And So it's kind of a weird situation, and we just haven't finished up putting in lights everywhere where there aren't lights at all to kind of drop onto these. But what we did is we looked at these just to kind of give you guys the idea. So there's 83 of those red dots that are on the thing that we.
If they're HOA, why are we?
Well, so that's the question, Dave. That's the perfect question. Is it the city's responsibility to go in and replace all of those lights with our own city street lights? Is it, as they stop maintaining those and they become, damaged or they aren't turning on, we have homeowners that call us and say, well, why aren't you fixing my light? And we're saying, well, they're your lights, you own them.
Right.
So we kind of look at that at the same situation here in Aspen East and the Cook subdivision. Are we responsible for putting in streetlights simply because they haven't been maintaining theirs, whatnot? So I wanted to talk about a couple of these subdivisions, and I'll just go through some of the numbers though. These SLO2 lights cost approximately $4,200 to purchase and install, just on a regular, easy installation. So the Cook subdivision, they have all of the gas lamps still inside the subdivision, and we have proposed 6 street lights to go in to the Cook subdivision. We're estimating the cost of that to be about $25,000.
And they're going in where the old lamps were.
Well, they would just go in this configuration. This is what our city's street lighting standard would be.
Okay.
So if the city came into this subdivision, that's the 6 lights that we would install, and then we would have to figure out if we just tell the homeowners, hey, you got a nice yard decoration, or, I don't think the city wants to go in and uninstall these lights from their properties, so we would just go in and install city street lights in those locations. So
Steve, aren't they up in the yard?
Yeah.
Or they're not in the park strip?
they're not in the
Yeah,
park
they're a good
strip.
10 feet inside.
So they're not, they're technically have nothing to do with the city.
Yeah.
We
And a
don't,
lot of them have a power meter actually in the base of them.
right.
So we would come in here, and because there is accessible power in these front yards, we would come in, we could install these at about that same $4,200 per light that we would normally see. The Aspen East South subdivision, I'm gonna split the Aspen East into north and south because there's a really big difference between the two.
Question first, how do you meter like Cook?
So they actually allow us to just connect these directly to the power system, and then they charge us a monthly fee based on the wattage that the light is.
So there's no meter.
So we
it's
don't
not
have
metered
to-
by that wattage.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we don't have to have a meter on these. Our bigger lights along, say, Lake Parkway, those have to be metered because they're a different style.
So is that true in all of these that you're talking about?
Yeah, these 3, we would just be able to have a direct connect, except for one, and I'll explain the nuance to the Aspen East North here in a second. But so the Aspen East South subdivision, we're going to call it. It has 8 lights that are proposed to go in. This one has all of those gas lamps, and we're estimating that's going to be about $34,000, and that puts us right at that $4,200 per. These little red lines right here are the conduit that needs to be installed in order to put the light in the right location. So that puts us at $34,000 for these 8 street lights. If you go to the Aspen East, the north subdivision, this is the piece to the north of the south. There's existing 3 Rocky Mountain power lights in these 3 locations, but there is no power source in the front yards of any of these roads. For some reason, all of the power is rear lot, and so there's no usable power for Layton City to connect to these streetlights. So the nearest usable power source is up here near the Fairfield Square subdivision, and there's 2,000 feet of conduit that needs to be run in order to install these 5 streetlights. So the 5 streetlights, the cost that we're estimating for that is $76,000, which is $15,000 a light to be able to install these 5 lights. So that's the challenge that we're running into with this subdivision. It's not that we don't want to put lights in here, it's just really, really expensive compared to other light locations that we need to get put in. Again, these are on the, I would call it the second phase of areas, simply because we feel like there is light here, even though it's probably inadequate light. It's it's better than no light at all, like some of the other subdivisions that we were talking about over here. So this year's project was to try and get these off of the list, and then we can go and move into these private lights areas and decide what we want to do. But go ahead.
So question right there on this,
Yeah.
where you're saying that the power's in the back of the homes, right there at 850 North, and is there any way to access power there? It seems
That's
like
what
that
we're
would be an
looking into.
easier way to do it.
That's what we're looking into. There's a power line back through here. We're not sure if it can be used because of the load that's on the line. A lot of times these older power systems don't have a lot of room to expand. And so we're trying to find every avenue we can to get this to be a lot cheaper than it is. These 5 lights will cost the same amount as what we typically can install 20 lights for.
Right, yeah, I understand the dilemma we're in.
I don't know. Is this
What's
East
that?
East Layton.
Is this like East
Sure,
Layton?
East
No, that's Layton.
It's
On the
just-
other side was East Layton.
Yeah, it's just the older, for some reason, all the power is under or behind the rear lots in this area, so.
For those of you that wonder what we talk about with East Layton, we're not talking about the east side of Layton. We're talking about what used to be East Layton City. And Layton City annexed East Layton City on February 1st, 1981, because they had no place to grow, no industrial, no commercial. And so we annexed and inherited what used to be East Layton City.
So Tom, to your question earlier about meters, this probably will become a metered system simply because wherever we have to get power, whether it's up here or over here, we're going to end up owning this whole entire power network essentially. And so the power company will probably have us meter these 5 lights off one connection point. So again, it's not that we're not trying to be responsive to these residents. We want to get them taken care of just like everyone else. But in that case, those 5 lights are going to be extremely expensive, and it becomes an issue of balancing the funds we have available and trying to get as much out there as we can. And so, again, like to your point, Mayor, we're looking at other options, trying to figure out if there is any other way to do it cheaper. Trying to avoid having to go into side yards and rear yards to try and make connections because they are pretty hard to maintain if not impossible in the future. So, and then we'll have discussions with Alex about how to manage those 83 pink dots on the screen there, because those are kind of the next phase of this is to start replacing the Rocky Mountain Power, the existing lights that don't meet our standard. And the question then becomes, how are we doing that? We think an age-based, rollout is probably the most appropriate, so we're not replacing lights that are still functional and in good shape. But those are the next steps that we need to discuss and bring back to you as the decision makers. So.
See, that makes more sense to me than going into some of these private ones. Some of those are fairly new subdivisions.
And I think we would probably put them in the age-based categories, even if they're the private ones, and then kind of see where they land as far as that goes. But I'm totally in agreement. If they're privately owned, is it our responsibility?
Yeah, I agree.
I'd say no, but
I have a question. So what other utilities are privately owned? Are the streets privately owned and everything in those subdivisions,
No.
or just the street light?
Yeah, just.
So it's something we chose as a city to enforce on the developer at the time?
Ivory Homes actually has done a lot of those, and the reason they did is because they wanted to have a nicer street lighting scheme than what Rocky Mountain Power would provide, and so the developer chose to have those installed the way that they're installed.
Yeah, the city didn't require any of those. It was by their request and granted an exception to put in the light within what was normally in. And they understood that, they acknowledged that. So that, the residents, as it turns over, of course, they don't know that or remember that. And so they're probably asking us to replace those lights. And so when you say it's put by the developers, you guys own it. We don't, it's not our light.
because there's a whole lot of the other old Rocky Mountain Powers that I would rather see replaced long before.
Yeah, we're talking about doing the old stuff. I mean, this stuff's tomorrow's problem. I mean, the pink, you know, but today we're talking about these places that either have no light or the lights have gone out. And so I'm missing something. Are you asking, this is what we propose to do?
I think it's more just telling
Or
you
just information?
that, hey,
This plus-
we're getting close to where we feel, we've got some of these that are kind of onesie twosies up here in the east side that we
Yeah.
can hit, but as far as going in and having really big areas of lights to install, we're getting close to being done, and then it's going to be, we need to start picking off some of these other projects like the Cook Subdivision and Aspen
Right.
East, but then the question
So
then becomes, do we feel like these areas that have got private lights are inadequate lights as well, or do we feel like they're okay and that we're going to go into the oldest of all of the street lights and start working with that?
I remember it was a budget discussion, not this budget, the last budget, where we talked about our desire when we were going to street lighting fee that we wanted to start lighting the dark areas. Do you have, and I'll put you on the spot, do you have any idea? It's a lot there was a lot fewer green dots than there were the last time I saw that. So do you know how many you put in the last year and a half?
I want to say we've done another 30 or 40. That's typically where we try and get our, I can try and pull a number for you.
These are the green dot ones, not just.
So we're,
Not many left from what we, because you had that plan, here's what we do want to light the dark areas of the city, and this is the tail end of that.
Yeah.
So.
But you're not talking about the end with the Rocky Mountain Power.
No.
No,
So-
that's,
so when is the opportunity to, I guess there's always a budget that an opportunity, I guess. But as far as the overall plan goes because that was, I would call low-hanging fruit for those ones. These are tougher ones, and I guess we've taken for the end. When you look at the overall project, yeah, that's a lot of money for 5 lights, but overall, what's the goal?
Yeah.
And those lights there, and so I live in those pink ones up there, and it's a different situation than the green ones. The green ones are never going to work. Pink ones are working okay. We pay the HOA, and yeah, what you're saying makes sense. That why would you even go in and start talking to those areas, but the places where in the older part of town, where we can. That goal is to light up the dark places. That's dark. So whenever we get the opportunity, I don't know how we want to do that. As far as okay, here's the next list, and here's the budget, and okay, vote. I would love to see that. So whenever that happens.
I think coming up, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's almost budget season for us to start preparing to present to you guys. So if that's the direction you want to head, we'll certainly look at that and bring it to you. And depending on all the other projects the city has going on, maybe we can put a little more money towards these residential lights this year to get them taken care of.
Well, I know last time, and I think, and I have to say thank you for doing this because, you know, we felt it was certainly situational where we had a lot of other development going on that was taking precedence over the residents. And yet the residents are the ones that are stuck paying the fee, so we definitely want to focus on them. So I'm glad that we whittled it down to this. But certainly, I would say the main focus on that as well.
Whittle even more.
We're trying. At the same time, everybody in pink and everybody in green are still paying the.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Everybody's paying, so.
I think at the point you understand it, is sometimes folks don't. They think if they pay a fee, which makes some sense, if they pay a fee, then they deserve a light in front of their house. And what we try to explain to them is you pay a fee that provides for a system, a lighting system throughout the city. And so there may be a light every 4th house or every 5th house or every 10th house that pays for commercial big lights along Gordon and Antelope Drive and Parkway and all of those. It's all part of a system, and sometimes that's hard for people to understand. They think, well, I pay my fee, I want a light right in front of my house. And so it's just part of that education.
Yeah, some don't.
I assume the lights are geared, covered.
Dark lights?
I don't know what they call
Dark
them.
sky?
Wall diamond lights, I call them, because they were geared to do inside the field, not outside the field.
Yeah, they're meant to eliminate
The glare and the,
right away and
Yeah.
not shine through houses.
okay,
Everybody has an opinion on that.
yeah, I know.
Either too much or too little, but yeah, that's certainly the goal.
Cool. Well, I'm glad that you've done a bunch, that's
Yeah.
great.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate all the work on it.
Heck, yeah.
progress.
This is, yeah.
The green's disappearing, so.
Yeah, and that's the challenge, is I can knock out 5 of those lights for the same cost as all of these lights over here, and I understand they're paying the same fee, but we're getting close.
Well, just on both, what are you arguing?
Okay,
Right, thank you.
any other questions on that?
No?
Good job, thank you, Steve. Okay, as far as our work meeting agenda, that whittles it down to the mayor's report, which I do have a couple items that I wanna, discuss with you. One is, I mentioned this a couple of months ago regarding the sewer district. They own some ground out there that they were approached to have a sportsplex be built on that ground. It still has not gone anywhere. I mean, the folks that presented it, they gave us a contract, everybody's looked at it. But quite honestly, there hasn't, the board at some point needs to make a decision on it. The question becomes, initially that ground was purchased as mitigation ground so that there was never encroachments to the sewer plant. But again, what's proposed for them now is an opportunity to utilize that ground and be able to capture some revenue on it. So before I feel good about voting on it, I realize you guys don't have a lot of details, but I would want to kind of have you weigh in on it and see what you think, knowing that, one, that it was initially purchased as mitigation ground, but then do an opportunity for the district to, I guess, to utilize the property as well. And we're talking the sports complex that's, I think they have 4 ball diamonds planned and regular softball, I guess, kind of complex. And we're going to try to put some concession stands out there.
So will it be like a
Be like a tournament.
RDA type deal? I'm talking about the deal, as far as revenue goes from it. They want the revenue help lower the sewer rates.
No, see, that's the thing, is it will not go towards lowering the sewer rates. What it does is basically these guys will just be leasing the ground, but you're talking some hard improvements that they're gonna put in there. There's gonna be like asphalt, concrete for the backstops and the,
That's, improvements is a word I'm not sure, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a sewer, I don't know how many people go down there to park. So I don't know how much of an improvement.
I don't know. I gotta tell you, this is vacillating back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I mean, really, there has not been any progress.
So question, this is mitigation land. Is there enough space or any future plans to expand? And would this be encroaching on any potential growth issues that the sewer district might have?
And
There-
along that same line, does it interfere legally with any of the stipulations of that mitigation ground?
And that's been the real question, and so the sewer district had an attorney look at it. He gave us back a 7-page document that has had a bunch of questions and answers to it. However, really what it boils down to is we really need a land specialist to kind of really dive into the contract a little more so than what this, because the attorney they had, he wasn't really a gentleman who specializes in the land use, and in particular knowing that it was mitigation ground, so. I don't know. I know that they want, obviously this company wants to make a decision here pretty soon, because it's been going on for 6 months. Back to your question, would it encroach? No, because there's additional ground out there that if they ever want to expand, I don't think they'll need to, but should we need to, that, there is ground available. But the whole purpose was to kind of protect that area and knowing
Yeah,
that
that's the whole idea.
it's right against the shores.
And
So-
when you do we gotta build, I shouldn't say we, because we're not part of it, but with the exception, do they have to build infrastructure? Do they have to get a better road?
So that
'Cause I
would,
know the
that
road
would
down
fall
there.
along the lines of Syracuse City. Syracuse City is definitely pushing hard for this. And
Sure.
it becomes obviously a destination point, in all honesty, because of the lot of tournaments. We could benefit because of the hotels we have, but I also know
Right way.
Syracuse will end up building hotels. So, but then again, when you look at it as county needs something like this. So that's why it's been like a juggling act. I mean, they just really have not been able to come to consensus on this at all. I was just curious if you guys want to weigh in on it. Give me your 2 cents so I can kind of have an idea.
Softball Ellison Park.
Has the plant done any studies or been required to by government agencies to limit the smell? There's probably a factor for that.
That's the biggest
I
thing.
mean, it seems to me that you can build whatever you want, but if people are playing softball and recreating, playing soccer and you're smelling the sewer, that's not gonna have a long shelf life.
Yeah.
But unless they, if they have products they're using and a system they're using that can take that away, then they work with it.
So the discussion there has been, I mean, one, that's the fear from some of the board members is even though they're saying, hey, that this company is willing to sign a release of any type of impact whatsoever. I mean, they're willing to take any and all liability on it because the sewer board saying, no, this is, we're in this business, we're not gonna promise you that the smell's gonna get better or anything like that. But the fear is when you look 20 years down the road, is the complaint gonna be so large, not only from them, but other residents, that then the sewer district's forced to go into, and Steve can help me on this, where you actually have to get into minimizing the odors, which if that's the case, that's $1 million spend just in building the system, let alone the chemicals in that. So there's a lot of pros and cons here.
I agree. But just thinking that it's one thing to, the business, it's private business, which sounds like it is.
It is a private business.
They'll only stay in it as long as it's profitable. And so if they build it and then people don't come over time because the smell is an issue or other things, the mosquitoes or whatever else they kind of then the district's gonna end up with a large facility that in this warehouse and the developer's gonna walk away from it. And they won't pick it up because they can't financially afford to do it. Then you've got the mitigation's been impacted. My guess is the next pressure would be, you said we've already got this in there, let's put housing or let's put other things. Housing may not work, but, and I'm not saying what's right or what's wrong, but I think that's, has anybody looked at the viability of that kind of facility in that kind of location? Is there experience in the state or other places where you put a recreational facility right next to a sewage effluent plant and it has the same standards? And maybe there's a bunch to say, yeah, it can work. You have to change your operation or no, if it doesn't work. I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but that's what I'd be looking at too.
My question was, from the sewer district standpoint, I mean, there's land that's not being used, they want to use it, like you said, for revenue. How is that not connected to some sort of operational or fee structure?
See, and they've never done this before, so that's why it's like, wait a minute, this doesn't really fall into what has happened in the past. The only thing they have done is they've leased ground, like on the north or east side of the district, they've leased ground to Black Island Farms that does a temporary fall festival thing out there, but that's all they've done.
And the mosquitoes are dead by then. Mosquitoes were my thought more than the smell.
The sticky subject.
How many board members are there?
So, let's see, 9.
Wow.
Yeah.
You get paid the big bucks to be on that.
Well, like everything else, I feel like, I want to include you guys and kind of, get your
As
opinion if you
long,
want to weigh in.
if they build it, they have to close the Gentile down at the bottom, but you can't go any farther. We got enough traffic.
No, that won't happen. Okay, two other things, you guys, and then I'll give us a break before our next meeting. The other item is, remember tomorrow morning, we're gonna do the dedication or ceremony for the Gordon opening, even though it won't be open to the public until over the weekend, but it's for our benefit, 9 a.m. We'll meet at the top of Gordon, just below 89, and certainly everyone's welcome. I mean, this is a public street.
So where's that, you're gonna access it off of 89 or off the corner?
What do you mean access?
Tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow, you can just go ahead and drive up 89, or I mean, up Gordon, I
Top
think.
board.
Yeah, they'll be at the top there.
So just,
And we're,
Do
even though the barriers are there,
well, they've got all the
Do we,
construction
do we
stuff.
flash our badges to
Flash
talk
our
to
badges and
you?
go on.
unless you wanna go up over by Cherry Lane and come back in, you can do it that way too.
Tell her she's saying.
The other thing,
Thank you.
let me quick, so I mentioned, a day of service, September 11th.
Yeah.
So let me bring you up to speed there as far as what's happening, and you guys are welcome to come. There's another meeting scheduled for the 30th, I think downstairs. Let me double check that. Actually, it's on the 31st at 7 p.m. downstairs, break room area. But there are, it started out with about 25 projects. We're up to 42 projects now throughout this entire city. It's set up to where we have
Streetlights.
yeah, 36 team captains with co-captains, and the co-captains were utilizing our CERT folks, kind of get them involved with the project as well. And so my question for us is, as a council, I mean, we can pick an area, or I think it'd be wise if we kind of divide up around the city and all this, you know, see if you're available that day for this specific area. I do have a
list.
So I got a
Yes.
question on that. So it was announced in our state that we'd be doing the commons area or something down here. Is the city providing equipment to haul branches out and do all of that kind of stuff, or how's this working?
So, this whole thing is in conjunction with the Parks and Rec Department, so yes, the city. And, so like in the parks beautification area, a lot of that is gonna be where they're gonna pull weeds and spruce up the parks and the playground area, so they'll provide all of that. They'll have the dump truck there with the product. We're gonna ask people to bring the rakes, or gloves, whatever. We'll provide the bags for weeds. As far as all the limbs and any type of debris, that, I know that we're still kind of working on the details, but the thought there is that we'll just create a big pile, and then the city will circle back around and use their big equipment to pick up all of the debris and put it in a dump truck and take it to the landfill. We do have a,
Okay, they shook their heads, yes.
am I saying this right?
Yeah.
Is that news to you guys?
Yeah,
That's news to us. If he says do it, we'll do it.
Well, like I said, I know that there's been discussion on that as far as what's the best way to handle it. So I haven't heard for sure what the final is, but that was one of the thoughts there as far as the major debris. Otherwise, a lot of us, some of the folks are saying, well, you got enough manpower, why not bring it up, put it on trailers, and send it out to the landfill that day. So I don't know.
Well, I just know because of the windstorm, the city was not involved, but I think it would be a good idea if the city was involved, if they're cleaning up their own parks and stuff.
Well, it's a day of service for
Yeah.
our city. It's a way of everybody kind of pitching in and showing their respect, not only to the city, but to their neighbors and, our commons area, because we're going to be cleaning up trails, we're going to be cleaning up streets. There's going to be projects available for any aid, well, not for any aid, but for any ability. So if you physically can't do something, there's a project you can do that doesn't require physical exertion, but I mean, so it's just a big project. It's a big undertaking, and it's starting to come together. So if you guys are available, come to that meeting.
31st, 7 o'clock.
31st, 7 p.m. downstairs, and for sure keep hopefully September 11th open. And I think each one of the areas will.
31st is the watershed.
So we could,
Yeah, we can get a break. Okay, that's all I have. I had a lot to know, but I appreciate it. We've got 10 minutes, so we'll officially call this work meeting.
He says, we do it. Absolutely.
Got Okay. Kim, are you ready? Okay, very good. I'd like to welcome everyone out to our Layton City Council meeting, August 19th. The time is 7 p.m. And so I'd like to call this meeting to order. And in doing so, we generally start out our meeting with a ceremony, and each month a different council member is in charge of that. So I am going to turn the time over to Councilman Bloxham for those services.
You want to rise with me? We're going to say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our Father in heaven, we're grateful to gather together as a legislative body for the city of Layton to discuss the matters of the day. We're grateful to be in the presence of so many of our wonderful workers, and we're grateful for the service they provide to the city. We ask you to please bless us as we discuss these issues, that we may have thy spirit to be with us to conduct the business of the city in a way that's pleasing to thee. We are grateful to live in this great country and the constitutional freedoms that we have, and help us to be kind to our neighbors and help us to strive to make our city the best we can. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councilman Bloxham. Okay. I know. I have to muff up on a name somewhere. Okay, with that, Council, I'd like to, we've got one set of minutes that we need to take action on, and they are from our work meeting of May 20th. So does anyone have any revisions or have read those where you feel like there needs to be any changes? If not, I'll look for a motion regarding those minutes.
I make a motion that we accept the minutes of May 20th, 2021.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and second that we accept the minutes as written for our May 20th, 2021 council work meeting. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on down to our municipal announcements. So if any of the council, do you have any municipal announcements you'd like to share at this time? No. What I do know that the Parks and Rec on the 27th of this month is going to have their end of the summer bash at the Layton Surf and Swim. So on that evening, it's from 7 to 9 p.m. There's actually a reduced price to get in. It's only $2, and the tubes are free. And it's based on a limited quantity of tubes, but certainly that's a good way to kind of end the summer, I guess, as far as coming over to the surf and swim and enjoying a good evening there. Those are the only ones that I know of, other than our day of service is going to be on September 11th. So please watch social media and some additional postings as far as what all that involves. But it's an opportunity for you to step up as citizens and residents, as well as business owners, to just kind of help beautify our city and really show the love and appreciation for one another. Okay, Council, I'll move on to our verbal presentation. And this is actually, we've got some service awards here, and I'm going to turn the time over to our city manager, Mr. Alex Jensen, for those awards.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and the members of the council. Can you hear me okay? Is that on? Okay, very good. Dave said too bad. He can hear me. So anyway, it's really a privilege, again, to have an opportunity this evening to recognize the outstanding employees of the city. And we have it's a small program, but we think it's important, and not in terms of the monetary value associated with it, but rather what it has in terms of its meaning. And that's that at 5-year increments, we try to recognize the employees of the city. For those that have been with the city for 5 or 10 or 15 years, anything less than 20, we take the opportunity, I take the opportunity to go into the departments and recognize the employees in front of their peers. If an employee's been with the city for 20 years or greater, we ask them to get out of their comfort zone a little bit sometimes and to come into a public setting like tonight to be recognized by the city council and by any members of the community that are in attendance as well. And so it's really a privilege, a blessing to have the opportunity tonight to recognize some outstanding employees. The mayor and the council have been given a list of all the employees who are at an anniversary date of either 5, 10, 15, or 20. But tonight would like to specifically focus on employees that in the various departments that have been with the city for 20 or more years. One of the things, I could go on and on, so you may have to cut me off, Mayor, but one of the great blessings the city has is a lot of longevity in really important positions. And those employees have adapted to the culture of the city. In fact, they've been a big part of the creation of the culture in the city, which is a very positive one. And they are shining examples as we have new employees come and people retire and new employees come into the city. New people coming into the city learn the culture and the expectations very quickly, not from me necessarily or from a Parks and Rec or a HR manual, but they learn it from their coworkers saying, this is the way we do business in Layton. This is what's expected. Honesty, integrity, hard work, accountability, all those kind of things that we expect in the city. And that's somewhat unique. And so the culture perpetuates itself. I say all the time, and I'll continue to say because I really mean it, the secret sauce of this city, and it's a good city, we're not perfect, but it's a really good city, is the quality of the employees, first and foremost. That they're good at work and they're good outside of work. Under just about any kind of definition of good you want to apply. And that's really, I think, the secret. And the mayor and the council and administration, we try to provide resources and support them, but this city functions as well as it does because of the employees, you. And so I want to thank you. And I consider it a blessing and privilege to be associated with you, and very proud to be associated with the employees of Layton City. The other thing I'd say, I see some of you, especially you men who are employees, that by your sides are some beautiful women that took a terrible risk on you. But my point is that, and I have the same problem, but my point is that we know, particularly all employees, but especially for public safety, public works, people are on call all the time, that there are times when you have to leave your family, and you do it voluntarily to go help somebody else's family. And just want to thank and recognize the spouses and the children, the families, the significant others of the employees of the city, because you're a big part of their ability to do that so well. So anyway, that's kind of a long speech, but it's generally heartfelt. So tonight there's some outstanding employees that we'd like to recognize, as there typically is, but I'd like to do it by department. And as I read your names by department, if you could just come up and then go around and shake the hands of the council members and let them congratulate you. And then when you come by me, I'll give you a plaque. It's not as good as a check for $100, but hopefully it has some meaning, and we hope the employees will take that and keep it and see that it's acknowledgement of appreciation and gratitude for all that you do for the city and the citizens of the city. So the first are two distinguished gentlemen from the fire department. The first is Mr. Michael Graham. I'm going to put my glasses on here so I don't misread this, but Mike's an engineer and a paramedic. And I should have mentioned Mike's been with the city for 20 years. The next is Mr. Brent McFarland, and Brent is a captain in the fire department and an EMT. So Brent here? Yep, in the front.
Next is from the police departments, Mr. Wesley McKinney. Wes is a police officer, been in the department for 20 years as well. And in fact, yesterday, he had his retirement ceremony. So he's retiring as a police officer. Again, perhaps I'm taking enough time. I could say something personally about each one of these employees. I love them and appreciate them. I say that genuinely. One thing about Wes, he's been a police officer for all these years. Being a police officer is a tough environment. And in that, employees and public safety in general is a tough environment. It's not that appreciated. But oftentimes, people become jaded and change as a result of the interaction they have and the difficulty. Wes is a shining example of somebody who's been an excellent law enforcement officer, but the difficult things he's dealt with haven't changed him. He's kind and gentle and professional, and he's a true gentleman, even when you're wearing the uniform. So congratulations to you, Wes. We're going to miss you. We need more like you. The next is in Parks and Rec. It's Miss Michelle Howard, and Michelle is the Assistant Parks and Rec Director. Thank you, Michelle. And then from Public Works, Mr. Jason Mott. Jason's one of our top mechanics in the public workshop. Maintains all of the equipment, helps maintain all equipment from fire apparatus to ambulances to heavy equipment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Good job, way to go. Thanks for taking care of everybody.
I don't think I've ever seen one without a hat on. And then 25 years, I'd like to recognize Mr. Brett Perkins. Brett is currently serving as a public works inspector. So he goes out and manages the construction and certifies it's done to appropriate standards. But for years and years before that, he worked in the water department. Brett's a great employee. He's like MacGyver. He can do anything, fix anything, do anything. Great job.
I know, that's what I was saying.
And the last is 35-year recognition for Mr. Steve Garside sitting here. So Steve was, for many, many years, served as the, in the city attorney's office as assistant city attorney, and just recently he's been changed and he's become the director of management services for the city and helps me as well as the assistant city manager. So Steve's been with a great job.
Thank you. Yeah, well, maybe he's better off.
Steve got me out of a lot of problems when I was in high school.
Well, thank you, Mayor. And again, not to belabor it too much, as amazing as the employees are that we recognize tonight, and they all are amazing, they're representative of the employee pool of the city in general. So you haven't seen or met all of them, but in seeing and hearing a little bit about these that we've recognized tonight, then you have a flavor for what we expect of the city and what we value at the city. The other thing I want to say is regardless of the department they're in, regardless of the uniform they wear, or whether they wear a suit and tie, or whether they wear Levi's and boots and hats and all those kinds of things, every one of them are a professional and they're an expert in their field. There's no distinction. They're as professional. Brett is as professional and an expert in public works and maintaining systems and building things as Steve Garcia is, wearing a suit and tie every day as an attorney or as director of management services. And that's one of the great qualities, is that there's a level of competency and expertise that flows throughout the organization. So again, just a pleasure to be associated with the mayor, and thank you for the opportunity to recognize him tonight.
Again, thank you all. We really appreciate all your dedication to the city. And as Alex had mentioned, there were several others that have put in a lot of time here as well that we want to acknowledge. I think there's, about another 20 that I wish we could acknowledge all of them here, because I do appreciate them, and I know the entire council could say the same thing, that we wouldn't look as good as if it wasn't for the staff and all the work that they do. So thank you again. So, okay. Thank you, Alex. We appreciate that. And we're going to go ahead and move on in our agenda items. We are now, yes, you're more than welcome to vacate.
Run.
Run while you can. You know what's neat about this is you see so many of the other department folks here that were here as camaraderie for one another. You know, thank you for being here for your fellow department employees and in their recognition. So I think that's cool. Okay, as everyone's leaving at this time that we're part of our service award, I do want to go ahead and move on to the our citizens comment portion of our meeting. This portion here is for you to bring any of your ideas, or questions, or concerns before this body. And so you're welcome to come up to the podium either side. You can state your name and address for the record. And certainly if you're here on behalf of a larger group, I'd be happy to give you more time. Otherwise, typically we ask you to keep your comments brief, and certainly if somebody's already kind of stated your point that you wanted to say, perhaps maybe you could bring up a new topic or a new point so that, you know, we're not hearing the same thing over and over. Because we do understand that certainly there are issues that are common, but there could be additional items that would be good for us to know. So with that, I'll turn the time over to our citizens.
Hello, thanks for having us tonight. My name is Robin Waters, and we live at 98 South, 2200 West in Layton, a couple lots down from the Bayview Veterinary Clinic. A lot of you have been contacted by my husband. Unfortunately, I'm sorry if that was not a good experience for you, but he has a condition that causes a really bad, hard time for our family. When the dogs are barking, and he went into a horrible panic attack today. I ended up leaving work just to try to get him to calm down, and I was able to get a hold of Mr. Tom Day today, who also came over, and he saw part of it, which was very calm compared to where he was before. We're wondering what can be done about it. They talked about doing a sound wall around it. I noticed there is a something wall around it, but it does not take care of the sound. And on weekends, we can hear, and even on weekdays, but usually it's weekends, we can hear the dogs barking on the inside of the building because it's ricocheting against the walls. I don't want to have to listen to dogs bark 24/7 when I'm out in my yard trying to mow the lawn or just enjoying a night with my family as anybody else would want to do. And I'm just wondering where that can be stand. I know that the animal control has been involved. We've called the police, obviously. We've been in contact with the city. And I do have a copy of the conditional use permit, which I don't think that they are meeting, in my opinion. So I just wanted to bring that up to your, so you guys can relook at that and see what can be done to eliminate this issue, so that we can enjoy our peace and quiet and they can still have a business for us. So.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm Tyson Waters, Robin's son. Same address, 98 South, 2200 West. Yeah, it's been real troublesome time for the past year or so, ever since it's been built. It is worse on the weekends when a holiday comes, or holiday weekend, or just weekends in general, but especially on a holiday weekend where a lot of folks will leave and come board their dogs right there. They can store up to 50 dogs, which we were not aware of and in the beginning that they were able to board there. As my mom mentioned, it's one of the reasons, or one of the parts of the conditional use permits that we don't see that's in there. But like I said, it's worse on the weekends, especially holiday weekends. You can hear the sound bouncing from inside, even from our place of residence. And like I said, it's been a lot of stress and emotional stress. Like I said, it comes to a point where my dad's, it's a medical condition in his brain and in his ears that when he gets triggered like that, it's hard for him to breathe, like to the point where he's bending over and having a hard time to breathe. And so he has to take some serious medication, and he's already on some medication to help with it. So we're trying to help from a medical standpoint from that side, but it is a condition that is unfamiliar with his medical doctors, and so we're trying to hit it from all standpoints here. So any help would be great.
Okay. Thank you, Tyson.
Can I add one additional thing that I didn't think of until Tyson brought that up, is that when they announced the vet clinic and put it up for that, it just said vet clinic. We were not aware that it would be boarding, so we were not involved in the initial approval or to make any type of standpoint towards that. Knowing that it would just be a vet clinic, thinking they're open from 9 to 5 or 8 to 4, whatever, like a standard vet would, not standard boarding of dogs every day. So anyway.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else that wishes to speak?
Good evening. My name is Louise Brown, and I've come this evening to request a work meeting between you and the citizens living in Cedarwood Mobile Home Park. I do this for 3 reasons. First of all, that the 71 families who are currently living in the park are in a dire circumstance. 14 of those families already face eviction by the end of December. And without your intervention, they will be in crisis and possibly homeless. Also, if this relocation by eviction process works, it's likely that the remaining families will face the same fate. Secondly, the 71 tax-paying Layton families that live in Cedarwood want to speak with you. Their stories are too unique and complicated to explain in a 3-minute citizen's comment here. But without a work meeting, their only option is to stand here one by one and try to explain their concerns in a 3-minute soundbite, and that's going to be a lot of sound bites. And then the third reason I thought of is I'd like you to ask yourselves, how many years has Layton City been working on the South Main Redevelopment Agency project? And how many work meetings have you had with Mr. Winkle or one of his representatives? And how many staff meetings have you had with him? And how many RDA meetings have you had with him? And I just can't imagine that those 71 families who are going to be so disastrously impacted by all the days and months and years spent working with Mr. Winkle don't also deserve your time and attention. Finally, I'm grateful. 2 weeks ago, Mayor Petro offered a work meeting in lieu of filling this room up with unhappy citizens who want their 3-minute turn at this podium, at this microphone. We gratefully accepted that idea. But after last council meeting, she motioned me up and said that the council wants to learn more about the situation before they face the citizens, and that makes sense. I understand that. But the question still remains in front of us that the time is running out for these folks. And so when is the right time to have a work meeting with the people in Cedarwood? They don't have that many choices. They're not good choices. They're choices that would cost them and the city time and money. And so I'm standing before you to ask you in their behalf to please arrange a work meeting for them. And give them the same courtesy that you have given to Mr. Winkle. Do we get responses at this, or do we just comment? Or do you have any questions for me?
Okay, Louise, no, thank you.
Okay.
I will definitely, again, see if there's a flavor for a meeting. I do know this, on behalf of the staff, they have been working on this project
for a long time. Yeah.
And without divulging any information that I can tell you that the pressure has continued to be placed upon them to make sure that they're following the state statute and to be able to take the proper action that is required here. So
I'm grateful.
So I mean, it's not going on deaf ears.
Good.
But I think
that's good.
You did see the article and realize that there's a lot of steps involved, and it does not stop here at the city.
That's correct. I served 2 terms on a planning commission and 2 terms on a city council myself. I understand the steps. I would just urge you in your deliberations to please be aware that when you use the term relocate, it's imperative to explain what you mean by that. Because if by relocate you mean for the people to be moved out of that area, that's happening right now. But it's happening by eviction. And I sincerely believe that the city never, in all of their deliberations with Mr. Winkle and all the times that they've said to him that he had a responsibility to relocate the people, that they meant eviction. I pray that's the truth. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure, you're welcome. Just make sure you state your name and address for the record.
My name is Rick Sheffield. I live at 729 East, 425 South in Layton. I don't represent the church, but I'm the bishop of over the Cedarwood. And I just have some current concerns. I've lived in Layton since first grade, and my claim to fame is I graduated with K. Petro. So, but I'm concerned. I'm concerned about what we do in this city for the poor. As a bishop, I'm concerned about how we take care of those in need, and these people that live in this trailer park are definitely those that are in need. And when we make a deal with the developers, I understand that this may benefit, and we're not opposed. As a private citizen, I'm not opposed to this development, but I'm concerned that there was nothing in writing that forced Mr. Winkle to keep the commitments that he's made verbally. And not only in this project, but other projects that I've been aware of as a longtime Layton citizen. I just think, I don't know all the legal ramifications. I'm not an attorney, but it just seems like when we do developments, we need to put something in writing, so contractual arrangements, so the developers can be not just encouraged, but required by law to keep the commitments they've made. These folks are going to be kicked out with, and they pay around $700 rent. Where are they going to find that elsewhere in Layton City? They're just not. So I would hope that what Louise said, that you'll listen to her. We can have a work meeting. There's some way that can encourage Mr. Winkle to actually help them to move to a different trailer park. Louise has looked around, and there's not many vacancies left in trailer parks anywhere around. So there's really not a lot of options unless Mr. Winkle will financially help these people relocate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sure, you're welcome to come up.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Brad Richens, 1902 East, 2125 North in Layton, Utah. Also concerning the Cedarwood project. Thank you for the couple of minutes. I just wanted to kind of share with a little CCO, Concerned Citizen Organization, with the residents of Cedarwood that we're forming. What's not going on here is a debate about gentrification or about population relocation, a displacement. We understand that's being done. And I don't think even the residents are understanding the need for redevelopment. And it needs to be done in these opportunity zones. However, I think, just as been stated before, a simple work meeting so that we can have the opportunity for those residents to kind of share not only how it's affecting each one of them and their families and their children and their high schoolers and all the people that are there, but also so perhaps we can come to some sort of resolution. We all know with gentrification what happens is there's no clear path as to what we need to do to how to relocate these lower income citizens and where to put them. And there's no government agency. I applaud the city council and the mayor because it looks to me like there has been a precedence established with Mr. Winkle that we need to relocate these, as the county attorney has said, properly, in a proper way, not just eviction. And so I think as we open the dialogue, if any help that the city council and the mayor can get opening the dialogue to Mr. Winkle, then I think there's a positive resolution that can happen here. And so having said that, I would just admonish that we have a work meeting and we could be heard and that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to address this body? Okay, seeing that there's none, I just want to say thank you. We definitely will take all those comments into consideration, and I'll get back to you. Okay, let's go ahead and move on, council, then to our consent items. We have, 3 items on our consent item, and as usual, we can enact on these as one vote. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to our employee of 20 years, Miss Michelle Howard, representing the Parks and Rec Department, and it's regarding an agreement with Layton City and Rocky Mountain Power for Ellison Park.
Yes, Mayor and Council, thank you for letting me be here. My first act as a newly plaqued 20-year employee is to come and present Resolution 2136 to you. This resolution authorizes the execution of an easement agreement between Layton City and Rocky Mountain Power for access into Ellison Park to provide electrical power to the new pickleball courts and restroom facility under construction as part of the Ellison Park Pickleball Complex and Restroom Facility Project 20-2, located at 700 North, 2200 West. You can see they've got a map up on your screen that shows where this easement will be. Specifically, this easement agreement is for a right-of-way of 10 feet in width and approximately 694 feet in length, provided for the construction, reconstruction, operation, maintenance, repair, replacement, enlargement, and removal of electrical power, transmission, distribution, and communication lines, and all the necessary or desirable accessories and appurtenances. I'm sorry, I don't know how to say that word. Thereto required for providing electrical power services into the park. Staff recommends that the council adopt this resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an easement agreement between Layton City and Rocky Mountain Power for access into Ellison Park and provide electrical power to the new pickleball courts and restroom facility under construction as part of the Ellison Park Pickleball Complex and Restroom Facility Project 20-2.
Council, do you have any questions?
Any questions?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
About this project.
Oh, no, never mind. When are you going to be done? After this approval?
So after this approval, the pickleball courts, I'm being told by the Parks Division, should be done around late October, first part of November.
Wow.
And then the restroom facility should follow that. Usability for this project would be in the spring when the weather clears up.
Cool. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sure there's a lot of folks that hopefully are listening, or that was music to their ears. So thank you, Michelle. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to items B and C, because Mr. Wilkinson's going to present both items, but we'll deal with them individually. So let's go ahead and with the amended plat.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. The first item is, as was said, is a subdivision amendment. This is the Layton Market Center Phase 3 subdivision second amendment. The location of the property is shown on the map with that red dot. It's up near the conference center, the Davis Conference Center. This is a aerial photo with the zoning map laid over the top. The property is outlined here in this crosshatched yellow area. You can see some of those stores peeking through the exhibit there. Michael's and the furniture mattress store there underneath there. Just go over the amended plat for just a moment. This is the proposed plat. There's some adjustments being made to several of these lot lines. There's also an easement, turnaround easement being provided as part of this amended plat. The plat in front of you now is the current plat as it sits, as it's recorded. You can see predominantly, as I go back to this other plat, that a lot of those changes, the property line changes, my mouse has decided not to, there we go. The property line changes are right around the area where that red outline is. You can see that easement very clearly, and you can see the other lot line adjustments that are being made. This is in anticipation of a transfer of some property to the Davis Conference Center from the current property owner. We don't have any plans or anything. We just know that that's being negotiated right now between the county and this property owner, and this will facilitate that purchase and the continued use of the remainder of that property. We have reviewed this, and we are recommending the council approve this subdivision amendment, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can.
So the purpose of the turnaround?
I'm sorry, what was that?
The purpose of the turnaround?
That turnaround's about where that back of that store is. If you were to look back at the aerial photo, this is that, and that's not very clear through that yellow, but this is where that existing store is, and that turnaround falls about right where those vehicles currently maneuver back there to get to those loading docks. So it'd be access to the loading dock and a turnaround area for those
Okay, so
vehicles.
no need to connect to the road that's just right there?
The road would be, so you've got the access road to the north. There's not really a road there. It'd just be accessing around the south side of those buildings.
Which they currently do.
So they're going to be preserving that as part of this to make sure they have that access and that turnaround after this is conveyed, after this property is conveyed to the county.
Okay.
So those retailers would still have access to those areas to turn around and maneuver their vehicles.
Okay, I just don't understand why they don't connect to the road that's just to the north of them. It'd be an easy pull in, and rather than having to go around and turn in. And
They do, but they've got some loading docks back there that they have to access via that roadway that goes behind them. It's a private drive, essentially.
Okay.
Yep.
One question. This was discussed in the Planning Commission on the 27th of July. I believe you were there. Did they have any discussion on this? I know it was passed unanimously, but I didn't see any of the minutes. So was there any discussion on it?
No, not really. Just some general questions, but no concerns or any issues with that. Yeah.
Okay, council, any other questions? All right, let's go ahead and proceed then to item number C.
Thank you. This is a rare occurrence. This is an appeal of an impact fee. This is the stormwater impact fee. I'm going to just turn this off because I don't have any slides related to this, but the applicant has paid their stormwater impact fee for development that's located off of Fort Lane. This is a property that's going to be developed as kind of a split between some RV park area and some storage unit area. The particular development, because of the conditions on the site, has chosen to take advantage of some new changes to state and federal law and to retain their stormwater on site. We went through a little bit of a discussion about the design of that system in our previous work meeting, but it will be 100% retention of the stormwater. Because of that, the applicant has approached the city and requested that we refund their stormwater impact fee in its entirety. It's about $145,000. And again, the requirements of our ordinance are that they pay that first, and then they can appeal that to the council. They have paid that stormwater impact fee, and now we're requesting that that be reimbursed. Based on the conditions of the site, based on this being what we feel will be a very rare situation, and based on the fact that they on the design, they won't have any impacts to that city stormwater system as designed, we are recommending the council approve this request for a refund of that stormwater impact fee, and that would be done by approval of Resolution 21-38. Be happy to answer any questions if I can.
One for you, Steve. I'm assuming this isn't, I'm up for really discussion, but I'm assuming this is an administrative decision, not a legislative one.
Correct.
Okay, council, do you have any questions? I know you did a good job in the work meeting, kind of explaining the parameters on why we would consider this, only because of the details of how they could maintain that water on the property going forward. So, I mean, this is kind of an anomaly.
Yes.
And we want to acknowledge that this is actually the first one. So.
Yeah, and we don't expect to have many. And thanks to Steve Jackson for his input on this as well. And he's reviewed all their plans and made sure that this meets all the applicable ordinances and can go forward.
So I just have a comment because it was brought up in work meeting, and that's about the cost. I think honestly that moving forward, there ought to be some administrative fee with this because, as you just said, your time is here. We're paying you to be here tonight. Steve has had to review plans. The money's had to be run through finance and taken back out through the finance department. There are costs occurred with this, allowing this to happen. And I think that it ought to be looked at in the future that maybe not a lot, but something of this probably ought to be retained as a refund fee or something like that for your time and services.
And Steve could probably answer. You'd have to see if that's legal or not. Whether you can, because I mean, they're asking for relief that's granted under state law. Then not often can you, I don't think, just pass along the fee on to them.
Yeah, but what if every developer comes in and starts asking, and state law keeps changing on us constantly, and all of a sudden, everything we've ever done on applications or whatever, the state comes in and says, oh, if they can prove this, they can get their money back, then how do we make our money? Yeah. I just am concerned that this is costing the city something, maybe not thousands of dollars, but it is costing us something in salary and time and effort to do this. And so whether it's an upfront application fee that's additional to this or whatever, I think the city's being shorted some money in this.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
All right, yeah. Okay, any other comments? All right, very good.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, that brings our consent items to a close. So council, I'll look for a motion regarding the consent items. Somebody?
Okay, because we want to go
home. What are you going to do when Dawn leaves?
Madam Mayor, make a motion that we approve the following consent items as presented. An easement agreement between Layton City and Rock Mountain Power, Resolution 2136. An amended plat at Layton Market Center Phase 3 Subdivision Second Amendment, and the Southgate Industrial Park Impact Fee Appeal of Resolution 2138.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second that we accept the consent items as presented. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. That pretty much concludes all of our agenda items on our council meeting tonight. Is there any unfinished business that needs to be brought before us? Seeing that there's none, I'll entertain a motion to dismiss.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Okay, thank you very much. We thank everyone who is in attendance and thank you those online.